while working with routing. Another option is we need to understand about route parameters. We need to understand about route parameters. So route parameters usually is nothing but earlier in older versions, means earlier in general web, we use query strings actually, query string. Route parameters advantage is nothing but it will allow parameter will allow to query any content directly from URL. Actually, for example, suppose we are typing like this. So we have some products information. So that means http:// localhost and slash 4200 and we have products. But we don't want all products. We want the products that belongs to specific category. In that case, usually what we can do is we can pass a parameter category. We can pass the parameter category. This is the parameter actually. This is the products and this is the parameter. Let's run this here now. Our project, ngServe project is Amazon. Okay. Now this is the parameter. There can be multiple parameters. So how to collect the parameters, how we can use the parameter? Generally, the purpose of parameter is to query directly any content from URL. That means products is showing the list of all products. And the category is going to filter the category and display. So generally, when we write the path for routing, when we write the path, it will be like this. It will be products. It will be products. And after that, so that is the products. And it is expecting a parameter. Then parameter is defined as /:. So that means we have /:. The parameter name. Parameter name is category. If there are multiple parameters, so /:, the ID. Like this, we can handle the parameters, configure the parameters. So we pass the parameters and access the parameters. Generally, the parameters are passed like this. This is category. Another parameter is /. Earlier, even you will learn in your JSP and all query strings and working with them when you are learning with that. So you will learn query strings, how to pass the query strings and all. Actually, we need to use, yesterday I showed you already, like question mark. So and category. So category is equal to some electronics. So and ampersand ID is equal to 1 like that. Now it is very simple. Just we can define simple with /. We don't need to use this question mark and all these details. So how to define the parameters? How we can pass the parameters in the route? Once example we will see how we can access the parameters and use them. So configuring the parameters and accessing and using the parameters. Let's see how we can manage that. Generally working with the parameter. So we will run this application that we created. And yesterday we already configured a single page environment with some routes. Now in that already we have the routes, that is products, which is showing the list of all the products. and some categories, products will be there. Now we have another option, categories, to get the list of all the categories. So our intention is transporting the data. Our intention is transporting the data and querying directly from the URL. How the route parameters are defined, how we can access and use them. So the application successfully executed. Let's run this and see now. It's compiled now. Now I access this here, localhost. Yeah, this is the design yesterday we created. And the data is coming from API. If I say jewelry, it will get all the jewelry related products. Now in that, it have to fetch the information from the API and display the products. And show products, it will get all the products related information from that API and display that. So now we need to understand how we can configure the parameters and work with the parameters, defining and working with the parameters. Let's see how we can define a parameter and use it. First, we will see how to configure the parameters. Just for your understanding sake, I will add a component here. Open in the terminal. Ng generate component details is a component. Details is a component. I am creating a simple component called details. Okay. So here I will write a path for that details component. So path, so it is details. Okay. And component, it is accessing the details component. Okay. Now that path is ready. Now when I request that details here, that means slash, here I request details. The details works, it is coming. Now how this details can accept the queries and how it can get the detail and display. At the top, you can see now, and it should accept some parameters. So how we define? So the parameters are written like this, slash, colon. So suppose ID is parameter. Another parameter slash colon, name is parameter. And slash colon, price is parameter. These are route parameters. When we design the path, and if the path is expecting parameters, we need to define them. Now, this every parameter is mandatory to pass. You see now the details is saying not found. When I request the details, it is saying not found because it is expecting 3 parameters you have to pass. And we have to collect the parameters. Let's go to the details component. In this component, we need to collect the parameters. To collect the parameters from the route, that means we have this details, path details, and ID colon ID. So slash colon ID is parameter, name is parameter, and price is parameter. Now we need to access these parameters, how they are passed in URL. In the URL, they are passed like this, details slash ID, some name, and some price. Like this, they are passed. Now, how to collect them? That means this is how they are passed: http:// localhost like 4200, like this they are passed. Now, how to access these parameters and use them in the page? In this details page we want to use. For that, we need a service called route. We need a route service. Actually, this route service is of actually activated route type. So we need a route of activated route. What this activated route will do is, activated route is responsible for accessing the details of the route, the parameters, the name, everything. It is responsible for that. So in the details component, we are configuring a route parameter. So technically, parameter. So parameter is nothing but, so how we define the parameter and configure the parameter. So here we need to configure. First, we need to import from Angular router module. We need to import activated route. So through this activated route, we can access the parameter passed into it. So in the constructor, we need to create a reference route. It is of type activated route. Now through this activated route, we can collect the parameters. I'm expecting 3 parameters. One is some ID. So I will just define ID. It is any type, and name is any type, and price is any type. That's any type. We have defined the properties. We need to collect all these from the route parameters. So what we have to do is, on initialization, we need to define this dot ID is equal to, we have to collect ID parameter. This dot route dot. In the route, you have an option. So snapshot dot param map dot get, and the parameter is ID. That is the parameter. So what is snapshot? Snapshot is used to access. In JavaScript, you might have learned JavaScript have a location object. Location object have a property. In JavaScript, location object have a property. Location dot host, location dot href, location dot path name. So you have learned location object in JavaScript. That JavaScript location object provides access to the complete URL with the help of href. Path name, it will get only this path. Only this path it will get. So that means which location it is present. Href will get the complete URL. So here snapshot is the path name. That means it is going to access this path. In the path, so we have a param map, parameter map. Parameter map is nothing but, again in JavaScript. So JavaScript have a array map. You have array map method. In JavaScript, you have an array map method. So it is a key value collection, key and value collection. Map is a key and value collection. That means now what happens is snapshot. So it will get, snapshot will get up to this location. That means up to the path it will get. In that param map, parameter map, it will collect these parameters as a map. Map means key and value. Key and value. That means key and value means, so ID is key and its value is 101. So, and name is the key and its value is mobile. Like this, it will access. So that means now it is going to get the ID and store in this ID reference. That means param map, through param map get method, you can get the key name. You have to mention the key name. This key name is nothing but in the routing module, you mentioned this key ID. You have to refer that key name. So we need to access that. Now this dot name is equal to this dot route dot snapshot dot param map dot get. So that is name parameter. You can get all also, right? In an object, you can store this dot price is equal to this dot route dot snapshot dot param map dot get, and that is price. We are accessing all the details. And these details must be displayed. These details must be displayed in our details component. Let's go to the details component. Here we want to display the details. In the HTML, so product details, we need to display the details. Data list, so that is data term, product ID, and it is from, so ID property. And another name is coming from, name is coming from the name property. And the price is coming from the price property. That is all the details we need to display. These are the details we need to display. And you can see now here at the top, when we request details, why it is showing electronics, footwear, all are working. And when I request here details, so details, it says not found because details is expecting parameters. Every parameter is mandatory. You have to pass them. So here I have to type details slash, and here we need to write the parameter 101 slash, suppose some Samsung TV, like this, and slash some price. These are the parameters, and hit enter. It will collect those parameters and it will use those parameters. This is very important in general technologies to allow the query strings to be passed, collect the query string and use it. Earlier, we use a lot of query strings for that. In your server side JSP and all, you will learn query strings. How to configure the query string, how to read the query string. Server side also, it will be there. Here, we are configuring this with the help of routes. By using route, we are allowing to pass the parameter and access that and use it. This is very much required for transporting the data from one location to another. To transport the data, you can put it in the URL, you can access and use in some other location. These are called route parameters. We configured this as route parameters. This is important while working with your APIs and dealing with the APIs. And this is very important for especially working with the data and passing the parameters. So this is a simple example of what is route parameter and how the route parameters are configured. I uploaded an example into the classroom, a complete example of route parameters with the data also. You can check that. Same concept with the data, whatever data we are having. So how to pass the parameter, how we collect the parameter and use that. Those things we have. I posted an example, you can go through that. So this is the concept of routes and how do we define the routes and configuring it. Now in the routing, one more important thing is generally people ask how we can navigate from one location to another on specific action dynamically. Actually, here navigation is happening when you click the button. when you click the button, the navigation is happening. It is accessing the details and displaying the details. Navigation is happening. So it is managing that. So it is managing that and displaying the data and showing it. But dynamic navigation is one thing which is regularly asked. And that also we need to know here how we manage that. For example, so generally what happens is, suppose we created a login screen. Let's add a component. So ng generate component login, skip this. Okay. We have a login component. And for that login component, we will design a screen here in the HTML file. I'm creating a login screen. So I'm configuring and designing the login screen. So that is data list, data term, so username, and a data definition. So here we have a text box. Input type is equal to text. So that is text, and another data term password, and a data definition. So input type is equal to password. And here we have a login button. So button login. So we are configuring this. So when you are defining this, so that means here on login click, we need some functionality to happen. This login screen is there, and we will go to the app component. And for this, we need route also. Let's go to the routing and put a route for the login. So path, so this is login. And we have a component. Component is a login component. Okay. Login component is defined. Now let's put the HTML link for that. Here we will create a link for login. So here we will add a login link, and it will navigate to the login. It will navigate to login. And usually when user clicks on login, the login screen will come. So that means we configured that login and the login screen will come. And here user enters the username and the password and clicks on login button. Then dynamically it should navigate. If login is success, it should take me to electronics. If login is failed, so it should take me to some error saying that, so invalid, please try. That means for that, we need error pages also defined. That means what we need to do is here, I will generate ng generate component. So invalid. So invalid login. Skip test. So okay. That means we generated a component invalid login. And what we do is, so we will create here a simple route for that invalid login also. So here we are adding another path. So path is invalid login, and a component. Invalid login component is invalid login component. Okay. Now this invalid login component, so we will put some message saying that, so a message saying that invalid, so invalid credentials, invalid credentials. And here we need to create an anchor, and this is nothing but router link. This router link should go to login again and say try again. Try again, we need to define in this. Now that is, so we configured in this way. Now the point logic we need to write here. So when user enters the username and password and login, I need to verify the credentials, and based on that, I need to redirect. That is a simple technique actually. So let's go to the login. Here we will declare some properties. Username is a property, and password is another property. And initially we don't have any data inside this. Now when user, we need to bind this, with the text box. So go to the login, and for this text box we need to bind. Because this is the project that we created yesterday, two-way binding is not ready. For that we need a forms module. So forms module, already, we need a forms module to use ng model and all. We need to import the forms module and go to the login screen. And here we need to bind. So ng model, so is equal to, so the data is username property. And similarly here, another ng model, so that is password, whatever the username password entered. And on login click, I need to verify these credentials. So that means we have to write the login click. So login click, that is the method to fire up. And on login click, so we need to verify. That means we need to access the username and verify. So if this dot username is matching with whatever the username we are expecting, so John, and this dot password is also matching with the password what we are expecting, okay, then it should navigate to home page or electronics page. Otherwise it should show the invalid page. That means invalid credentials, like that. How we can dynamically navigate on the button click, that is general requirements in the project actually. For that we need another routing component service to inject. Private, we need a router. It is of type router. We need to import this router. From Angular router. And we are injecting that into our component. Now what this router can do is, it will allow us to configure through this router navigate. You can navigate to any specific path. You can configure the path here directly. So what is the path to navigate? So it is an array. Navigate is a collection of commands, path, parameters, and everything we can give. In that, which path? So it should go to the path invalid log. Should go to the path electronics, or it should go to the path home. That means if it is successful, it should go to home. So that is how we are configuring. Through router navigate method, we can dynamically navigate. Actually, in JavaScript, how you navigate dynamically? Can you tell? In JavaScript, how to navigate dynamically? In JavaScript, on button click, if valid, we have to go to one page. If invalid, go to another page. In JavaScript, what you will do for navigation dynamically? We have to use location.href. Am I right? We have to use location href. Through location href, we need to navigate to that location. So here we have to use router navigate. So router navigate, and it is managing. Else what should happen? This router navigate to which location? It should navigate to invalid login. Remember, not component name, the path name you have to write. It's not the component name. The path name you have to configure. That means path name. What is the path name you given in your routing? That path name you have to define. So that means here we have to specify the path name in the routing module. So whatever the path name is there, you have to configure that. So that means, so I will open this routing module. So technically open the module. So array means it will accept multiple values. Multiple values means it will have the path name, it will have the parameters. Understood? Parameters, what parameters you want to pass, so many details will be there. That's the reason it is an array. It is because route contains so many details. Now route path contains so many details. What are so many details? It contains path name, it contains parameter, it contains component. Then so sometimes we need to pass which component, sometimes we need to just pass the parameters. That's the reason. Yeah. Now, when we are configuring this, so I entered some username and I entered on login click, it should fire up now. Login click. So let's go to the login button. And on the login button click, it should go to access the method login click. Access login click. Now, when user is typing here some John and some password is wrong, and login, it should say invalid credentials. And try again. It should go to the login. But see here, in the URL, invalid login and login is coming. That means generally when you navigate to any path, what will happen is this path is going to, this path is going to add, the login path is going to add to another. So on link click, see what happens is this will add to existing path, but it should remove all the path and go to login. Then we have to use a slash there. We have to write a slash login. So otherwise it will add this to the current path. So slash means come out of all and again login. So that is correct way. So here we see login now, and we are defining the username. So username is John, and so password is something wrong, and I click login, invalid credentials. I click try again, and it will get to the login screen again. I entered the credentials John and some John 1, 2, 3, and it will get to the shopping home. So it is successful, automatically it will navigate. If not successful, it will go to some other path and it will display that. This is usually managed by using the routing techniques. So through routing technique, so how dynamically we have to navigate on the button clicks on the options, because when we say register, after register, next what? It should take us to the login screen. After login, it should take, if login is successful, it should take us to the welcome screen. Or if it is wrong, then it should take us to the invalid screen. This we have to dynamically control. And the dynamic navigation is managed by using this router. So to access the route parameters, you need activated route. To access the route parameters, you need activated route. And to handle navigation dynamically, we need router. Activated route and the router object. These are important. So you have seen all the techniques now. That means how to pass the parameters, how to access the parameters, how to navigate on button click. So how dynamically navigation happens. It decides according to the situation, whether your password is matching or not. Depending on that, it can access. All such things we can manage by using this routing technique. And very important, what you see generally is when you are accessing that, so it will not refresh the page. Without refreshing the page, the new contents will come onto the page and it will display. All the actions are performed through one page. That is why we call this as single page application, single page. This is the technique how the routing and the routing concept works in the Angular. So this makes the perfect single page application environment SPA, we call this as. So in Angular, after understanding this routing, one more important part we need to understand about form validations. Already we learned about forms, how to design a form, how we can accept data from the form, one-way binding, two-way binding. We designed forms in examples also. I showed you forms in various examples. But the point is, while working with the forms, mainly because later when you work with your APIs in Java, so APIs and all, so validation is very important part to understand. Suppose you will create Oracle database. In the Oracle, I hope you all people are working with Oracle only, right? And in the Oracle, you will create database and you will create tables. You will create tables. Now in that tables, you will have data. And the data is important here is, suppose we have ID, we have name, so we have age, like that, email, some data is present. Now, when your server side technologies, that means actually in your server side JSP, you will learn how to communicate with the database, get the data from the database, and interact with the data. But what you will learn is this data you provide and handle the interaction with the help of APIs. That means you will use web services, you will learn a web service, and you will learn how to fetch that and send to the client. Now from client side, in the client side, we are presenting it already, okay. But from client side, when we have to submit that information data, so we will create a form for the users. We will create a form for the users. From the form, they will fill the details. From the form, they will fill the details. Now, when they are filling the details from the form, so they are filling the details from the form, we have to reduce burden on server. That means if they enter wrong details, suppose we are expecting some age, so ID, okay, name also okay, some John. Age we are expecting number, and they have sent some string, and this is not valid. Generally what happens, this comes to your API, they will post the data, this will come to your API, and from there it is sent into the database, and database will reject it because the data type is not matching exactly what it is expecting. Then it comes to your API service again, and here it will prepare an error message saying that age is not valid. Then it will send back to the client. This is lengthy process. So generally you will learn in server side technologies how to validate the data server side. But validating data server side is always a lengthy process, very risky. We need to reduce burden on servers in web technologies. Then what we do is we can validate the data in the client side itself. Client side itself. Earlier, we can do validations client side with JavaScript, jQuery. Now, what is speciality of Angular is, Angular speciality is Angular provides a ready-made service for validation. In JavaScript, jQuery, actually you already have some validations. Suppose we have a text box, input type is equal to text. In HTML, you learned. In HTML, can you tell me what are the validation properties available for text box? What are the validation attributes available for text box in HTML? What are the validation attributes available for text box? What are the validation attributes available for text box? The text box validation attributes, we have the attributes like required. We have the attributes like min. We have the attributes like max. So you have the attributes like min length. Actually, min length and max length. Min length. You have like max length. You have like pattern. You know, pattern also is there, no? For text box, you have pattern, right? These are all the validation attributes. So for the text box, you have pattern also, right? So we have the pattern also. That means generally HTML is providing all these. But in JavaScript, you will learn some more functions, how to write validations. So for example, some value is required and it is not provided. Then we need to show an error saying that this is required, please enter. For that, earlier we need to depend on a lot of JavaScript jQuery functions. We have to write the functions manually. But now when we are working with Angular forms, these validations are easily handled by using validation services. By using validation services. Validation services, we have simple services which can easily verify the values. Like we have invalid, we have valid, we have pristine, pristine, we have like dirty, dirty, we have touched, and we have untouched, untouched, and we have errors, errors. So these are validation services related properties. By using these properties, we can easily verify the value without writing much logic. Validations are very easy now. I will show you that. I will show you. Invalid, valid, generally their name itself tell. So invalid means it's not valid. Valid means it is valid. Pristine means it is not modified. If value is not modified, then pristine. If value is modified, then it is dirty. Dirty means modified. Pristine means not modified. We can even know whether it is modified or not. And touched means focus. That means when you go there and come out, that means it is touched. That means text box have two options, you know, controls have two options, focus and blur options will be there. Once you click inside the text box, that is touched. So that is touched. So if you haven't clicked inside, that is untouched. So error is to track all these errors, required error, min length error, max length error, all these errors you can track by using this error. So I will show you how simple these validations are now. Generally JavaScript jQuery, we need to write the functions, but now not required. Let's see. Suppose one simple approach how we can create the forms and configure the validations here. So I will create a simple form here, and let's see the validations for the form. Let's generate a component. ng generate component, validations. So validation demo. Okay. Now for this validation demo component, so I will just keep a simple routing link also. So in the routing module, we will keep the route links. Okay. And here I will add a simple option path. So validation. Okay. And this is component is validation demo component. Okay. We are accessing that component. And let's put that in the links also. So here I will just keep another link. This is for validation. Validation. Okay, that is for here. This is validation. This is testing the validation. Just it can be like register form or anything you can have. And validation works. Here we will design a form. Let's go to the validation and here create a form. So let's create a data list. So div, yeah, inside a data list and a data term, and we have like username. And for that we have text box. So input type is equal to text. Now how we can make this dynamic? So for that we already know. We configured this as name, as username, and we need to configure ng model, and here hash username is equal to ng model. So we configured that dynamically. That becomes dynamic And now we need to put some validations for this, validations for that. So, and when form is submitted, that means this entire data list I will keep in a form. We are configuring that in a form. And we have a button. So button is register button. We are defining the register button. And let's keep the class as BTN and BTN primary. Okay. Now, usually in a form, if you kept a button, by default, it has submittability, because by default button is a submit button. Now, when I click register, if username is not entered, it should fire up the message. That means username is required actually. If username is required, then how you handle that? Actually, I can give simple here required attribute. This is a general HTML attribute. But how it is going to show that message? Generally in HTML, it will show the message in a pop-up. In a pop-up, it will display the message saying that name required. Here you can see now, without entering the name, I click register. It's not firing up those errors. It is not firing up any message and showing. In HTML, it will do. So that means you learned in HTML. I will show you your HTML page. Suppose, let me show you your HTML page any. Okay, so let's add a temporary HTML page, sample.html. Okay, generally in HTML, you design a form, and in that you have input type is equal to text. And for this, if you give required and put a button and say register and see what happens. Generally, if you do this in HTML, you know that. So in HTML, without entering, I click register, a pop-up will come like this. Please fill out the field. A pop-up will come. And you know the other options, we can write the attributes like min length is equal to 4. So max length is equal to some 10. We can use pattern. So you have learned patterns. So pattern is nothing but suppose regular expressions. I want to allow only uppercase letters 4 to 10. That means A hyphen Z 4 comma 10. That means only uppercase letters 4 to 10. You learned how to write the patterns and all. That means this is how we do validation in our general HTML. But all the messages will fire up here. Suppose I click, it says fill out. Okay, I entered 3 details. It says, so min length is required, max length is required. These properties it has to display. Please match the requested format. Requested format means that is pattern problem. That means all should be in uppercase letters. Then it is able to submit the details. Like this, all the messages will come pop up. But generally in real world forms, when you see, we keep the error messages simply. Suppose I want the error message like this. So what I will do now here, let's go to our validation component here. So we need to check, is it valid or not? Required problem is there or not? And display the message here. We will have a data definition. And here I will put a class called text danger. Okay. And here I want to apply, display the message. Actually, we can check whether this username is valid or not and display the messages. So simple, what I can do is I can put a div here. In the div, we can simply write a message saying that name required. Name required. You can see by default that name required is coming here. But it should display only when you submitted the form and it is not entered. When I entered some name, it should not display there. Then usually when to display this name required, we will just use an ngIf. ngIf. Here we can access that username. So username is the text box. So dynamic text box ID. If username dot invalid, we have an invalid property. If username is invalid, then display name required. If it is valid, it will not display. Now you see here, initially it is name required. I entered some name, it's fine. I remove that name, then it should display that. It should display that name required. But whenever we open the form, automatically it is displaying. Whenever you open the form, automatically it is displaying. But I don't want to display. I don't want to display until it is touched. Until it is touched, I don't want to display. Then we can use like this multiple conditions. If username dot touched and double ampersand. If username text box is touched and it is invalid, then show the message. You see now, currently it is not showing any message. But see, the interesting part here is you click inside text box. That means it is touched. Without entering name, you come out. Then it will automatically show that message. That's good. And that is very simple. You don't need to write any logic for this. You have ready-made services. We need to just use these services. Now I entered the name, then it is gone. So that means, so you can simply handle the validations. If it not entered, it will display. Not only that, so suppose I click on register button without entering name, not touched, I click register button, it have to fire up that message and display. That means we can write another concept. Another concept is if it is submitted. That means if it is submitted, if form is submitted and it is invalid, then it should display the message. So that means you can write so many things. That means if username touched, that is working. Here form also will have a reference name. Generally for the form reference name, we define like this, hash, the reference name is FRM register, that is the reference name. And forms are configured as ng form. So that defines, that makes the form dynamic. Now here in the dynamic form, so we can access the form status and we can display the form status. That means what we can do is, so we can access that form and verify, is it submitted or not? If submitted, then we can display the message. That means here we can write one more condition, or, so we have to write or FRM register dot submitted. So we have submitted. That means form is submitted, or form is username is invalid. Then it should display the messages. Now you see now what happens is when I click register button, means form submitted. So that means we are collecting the form and we are verifying, is it submitted or not? If it is submitted, and it is not valid, if it is submitted and not valid, then obviously it will display that message now. That means this name required message is going to display in two situations. You click the register button, it will show. You click inside and come out, it will display. That is how we generally display the messages. This is very simple for handling validation. We have ready-made services, touched, invalid, valid, submitted. By using that, we can easily verify and write. We don't need to write much logic. But here one problem is there. We have to handle the problem also. The problem is nothing but generally what happens is every element may have several validations. That means here it is having required validation. Okay. It is having min length validation. Min length validation is nothing but, in min length I defined 4. That means minimum 4 characters are required. 2 validations are there. In that case, here 2 messages will come now. 2 messages will come. I will put 2 spans here, span. One message is name required. That is for name required message. Another message is for name too short. Name too short. Minimum 4 chars. This message. That means we need two different messages. Now, which message to display? So both should not display. You see, when I click, so both are displaying. If required problem is there, required message should come. If a short problem is there, short message should come. In that case, these two messages, again, we have to display by using ngIf. ngIf. Here we can define in this way. If username dot, we have errors. Errors is a nullable type. Nullable type we put with question mark. If errors is errors dot, so dot means if the errors is a required error, it is a required error. If it is a required error, then this message should come. Similarly, we need to keep another option, ngIf username dot errors. Errors, if it is min length error, then this message should come. That means for every message, for every error, we can put a separate message. So that is optional. The earlier versions, this errors object is not optional. So, but optional means this object properties are optional. That means what this means? It is nullable. Understood? That means it may have required or it may be null. So min length or it may be null. So that means it is nullable. Question mark is null reference character. I already told you in interface concept in the contracts while learning TypeScript. I showed you how we can keep optional contracts, right? Optional rules in the contract, already we discussed about that. In early versions, errors object is not nullable. In very latest version, that is Angular 12 onwards, they made this nullable. In Angular 11 version also, it is not nullable, it is normal. So you have to use this nullable in the latest version only. So you see this now. That means the point here is I click register button, it says name required because it is empty. I entered the name. Now it says name too short. It is having only 4 characters. And I entered the details correctly. Now it is fine. If I make it short, then it says name too short. And I remove this also, then it says name required. We can also use like name too short, or we can also write like patterns. That means if it is not uppercase letter, so if it is not having pattern means you can write for patterns also. For example, see, I will put another data term, and here I will put mobile, and here I am defining a data definition, and the class is the data definition for mobile. Here I will keep as input type. Input type is equal to text, and name is equal to mobile, and ng model, and hash mobile is equal to ng model. And we have another option, yep, ng model. And here we have required. And mobile is having a pattern. Mobile is having a pattern. So pattern is nothing but for mobile, we have a pattern /+91. So 09 and a 10 digits number. So like this, we have a pattern for the mobile. So mobile have a pattern. Now we need to put the messages for both. That means we need to create our main div here, data definition. And here we have a class text danger and a text danger. Okay. And here we need to configure same. That means this time we have to write a div. This is using ngIf mobile dot touched, if mobile touched, and mobile dot invalid, if mobile touched and mobile is invalid, or so frm register dot submitted, that means form is submitted, then it will fire up the errors. What are the errors? First error is mobile required, that is the mobile. And the second error is invalid mobile, invalid mobile. So plus 9110 digits like this, I given the message. So that is invalid mobile we are defining. Now when to display first message? So we have to write ng if is equal to, so mobile dot errors. In that, if it is required problem, display that. When to display the second one? So ng if is equal to if mobile dot errors dot pattern. If it is pattern problem, then show it. So that is how we configure. Now you see, now we have two options. I click registered, then it will display those both required. Suppose I clicked only in mobile and came out, then it says mobile required. So it can handle both validations. So name required, name too short, I entered, that's fine. Mobile required, I'm entering mobile. So, and it says invalid mobile. 9876543210, it is still invalid mobile because it needs plus 91. Now it is okay. That is how we need to configure the validations. So we can define the validation, we can configure the validations. So by using these validation services, that is very simple. We don't need to write much validation errors, means functions. So earlier we need to depend on a lot of JavaScript jQuery functions. Now we can easily handle that by using this type of validation services. So these are the form validation services. So technically the advantage of that means, of course, it is not submitting. That means if form is submitted, so that means we need to write some functionality. So how do we write the functionality? Let's go here. So we will write on submit. On submit, so we have to collect the data. So the data is in any type. So we need to collect the data on submit. And generally form submit events, how you write? Here we write the submit event. In the form, you write the submit event. So general submit event, so submit. And it have to call form submit. That means on submit. We have on submit. On submit is the method. That method will fire up. It is expecting the data. Data is nothing but frm register dot value. It is nothing but it will send all the form data. frm register dot value, it will send the username, it will send the mobile and everything. And if form is submitted, we have to collect the data and display. Then here I will use, so simple alert, so JSON dot stringify, and I will present the data that is collected. If it is successful, then only this submit should happen. That means now I am clicking that register. It is not showing these empty options now. Why these empty options? That means it is required with the data. And generally, we need to write one more functionality now. What is the functionality here? The functionality is nothing but we have to verify form submitted or not. I said mobile and plus 91, some number I defined. Now you can see it is accessing the data and displaying. We need to manage this. So we need to verify whether the form submitting the data or not. How we verify that? So generally what we do is, for this we need to write the validation now. The validation is nothing but, so simple validation is nothing but, already I showed you the service. Which one will verify whether submitted or not? So whether submitted or not is verified by using, it is submitted or not, that is verified by using this frm register dot submitted. So this frm register dot submitted is going to verify whether the form submitted or not. And if form submitted is true, if validation is true, then it will submit. Otherwise, it will not. So for that, we need to write the submit event, and through the submit, we have to access the details. And these are this general example. The entire example I posted I will post into the classroom of complete validation. You check that, because now you have seen two options. Similarly, we can write some more validations. I will show you one more technique. That means how generally data is posted to API. If it is having errors, it will not submit. If it is not having errors, it will submit. So that means we need to write the condition according. You can directly put the validation. How you prevent validation is, I told you one more option is there. So simple. Actually, this button is having a property. What is the button property? Button property is disabled. We have a disabled property. In the disabled property, we are accessing FRM register dot invalid. So FRM register dot invalid. That means you see here. So now it is not submitting because these are invalid. The form is not submitted. You cannot submit the form because you disabled it. That is how we can access that and verify. That means the button will not work until or unless it is valid. So you can put the disabled property. If form is valid, then only submit. If not valid, it will not submit. That means you entered the username. Okay, still it is not valid. You cannot submit the form because you disabled it. Now when I entered the correct, now it is working fine. You can submit it. If there is any problem in the mobile number, so it is disabled again. You cannot submit. So it is submitted only when it is valid. When it is valid, it prevents submitting. Prevent submitting is nothing but you have to just write the logics and you need to configure the logic. That means you can disable the button. If the form is valid, it will enable. Otherwise, it will not. That means it will never allow you to submit at all. That is how we have to write the logic and handle it. This is basic validations and handling the validations when we are dealing with the forms. Now, in this, one more point is there. Dynamic forms are also created, configured, how it is used, and one simple example of how to build and deploy the applications, deploying the applications. These two topics are there that we will see in the next session. So with that, we can finish all this Angular part. And you will use this Angular in your APIs now. In your Java, whenever your people will teach you about web services and all, there they will show you how to integrate and how we can work with this Angular environment. So tomorrow we will discuss how the dynamic forms are created and deployment concept works. With that, we will finish all the Angular part. And you will use this Angular in your full stack development with Java web services, how to communicate with APIs in your Java. Okay, so this is all the Angular part you need to know. So by tomorrow, we will finish all this part, and rest of integrations, your Java people will take care about that. Okay, so tomorrow we will continue with this. Right. Yes, Tapasvi God.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Morning.
Sir, actually, I am getting error in service when I am importing the services in means component. I am getting error like can't find module.
Have you registered that in app module?
Yes, sir.
Service registered in app module,
Okay,
or
means
you given
sir.
in the provider? Can you share your screen?
Yes, sir. Just a minute. Hello. Yes, sir.
You remove that path. That why you are writing two dot dot slash dot dot slash.
Okay, I have to remove this one. Only
Uh,
single dot dot only.
Where your file is there, you should know it first, right?
Okay.
Only one dot dot slash, na?
Yes, sir.
Then you are giving the wrong path, right?
Yes, and app modules also I have to register, no?
Huh.
Here, services.
Huh.
It is means it is coming from Angular core, sir.
Huh.
Okay. Yes, sir. I import the service, right? Okay, sir.
You
I
don't
will
need
do.
to import. You already have that, right? Why you are importing here?
No need to import here. Here, just I have to remove
You
this
have
one,
to
sir.
remove that one. You know where your path
Okay.
is there. First remove that complete path.
Mm,
Now remove that import.
This one also I will
No,
remove.
type import. What is your service name? Type the service name. Don't waste time in copying and pasting that. Type the service name, it will give you intelligence.
Yes, sir. Service fine, sir.
From
From
dot slash dot dot slash. First dot dot slash, not just dot slash. So remove the second dot dot slash. You learned HTML. How
yes, sir.
you learned HTML without knowing how to write path? Slash services. Where is your folder? Dot dot slash. Come on, where you are typing?
It's coming, sir. I am means scared actually.
Slash services. Dot dot slash.
Yes. Then write services.
Where is your folder? So we have to write that, na?
Yes, I have folder here, sir. Means in app I have folder services.
But where is your NASA separate component folder you created in services only?
Yes, yes.
You have to
I
put that
really
in
created.
components, right?
Okay. I have removed that one and I have to put in component.
You
Okay.
don't need to do that. Actually, you can refer the path correctly here. So
And
remove that
another one
path
also I
there
put.
and use dot dot slash. You will get services folder. From there you can select.
Okay, sir. Here also I actually from yesterday onwards I am getting
Same
here also
path
same.
problem.
Here no path I am means remove that one, sir.
You are keeping the folder, the component folder in the services itself, right? You created the component in the services folder itself. Then how you will access? You have to access with dot slash, right?
Okay. Dot slash.
Remove the complete path. First, remove the complete path, what you written there in the codes. Not complete line, only the path, right?
What to write, sir?
Write dot dot slash.
Dot slash.
What is the folder you are having? It is
I've
outside.
No, this is in component folder and the service is outside
So
the folder.
again dot slash.
Sorry, where I am writing. Dot slash.
Here you have services folder.
Services.
There again slash.
Again services dot.
In that your service name.
Capture service.
Okay, that is how you
Yes,
have to
sir,
write
yes.
the path.
Previously also I wrote that like that only, no, sir?
No. So previously your component is somewhere else in some other folder. Once check the folder.
Okay, sir. Okay.